Welcome to the Survivor's Chair podcast, a podcast where we break down our stories and our trauma, understanding how they have impacted our career and our life. This is a place where we break free from shame, own our truth, and step into our power, one story at a time. Hi, I'm Kim, an adoptee, a former foster youth, hairstylist, salon owner, breast cancer, and complex trauma survivor. So join us, pull up a chair, in this no sugarcoating, no holding back, honest conversation about healing and success. Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Survivor's Chair podcast. I am so excited to be here for another week. And today we are going to talk about survival mode, what that means, what happens, what we do when we're in survival mode. And I can tell you that I have done all of them. So I'm going to share with you a little bit of what it means to be in survival mode. When you're in survival mode, it's exactly how it sounds. You're trying to survive. You're trying to survive in a world where, as a child, you felt unsafe or not cared for or a turbulent childhood for whatever reason. But one of the things that probably was the most prevalent in my life, and I did touch on it a little bit in the last podcast. My survival was seen as strength. Look at her, she's so strong. That I could talk about for an hour, that topic, but that's not what it was about for me. It was about self-protection, it was about self-preservation. I was always on high alert. I was always waiting for some kind of danger to happen. No place felt safe. So my strength came off as, or I should say, my survival came off as this strength when really I didn't feel safe growing up. I just felt like there was danger around every corner, and every person in the world to me was deemed unsafe, which meant I trusted nobody. The only person I could trust was myself. And even I didn't have a whole lot of trust in because I wasn't making the best decisions. So when you're surviving, you're kind of, you're protecting yourself, you're taking care of yourself because nobody else can or will do that. And so that comes on as strength because you're doing everything yourself. You're not asking for help. Looks like you can handle a bazillion things, but on the inside, it's always on the inside that it's tearing you to shreds. My survival was, and my strength was to protecting myself, like I said, because it didn't feel safe. And I didn't feel that there was anybody in the world who would keep me safe. If anybody has gone through any kind of childhood trauma, they can probably relate to that. And that stems from having that unstable childhood, whether it was physically or an emotionally abandoned parent or caretaker. They can physically abandon you in a way like me being left in a car or your needs not being met, or they can emotionally abandon you, not paying attention to your needs emotionally. Sit down, be quiet. I'll give you something to cry about. Keep your mouth shut. Don't talk unless I ask you. Children don't need to be heard. All of those things that nobody really knew what they were saying back in the day, I think. But boy, do we know now. If you're not getting your needs met by your caregivers, and I'll keep saying that all the time, your caregivers, the relationship you have with your caregivers, whether it's biological or not, it's that main person that takes care of you. When that is severed or broken or not normal, whatever normal is. So that shapes your whole life. That shapes, when you're an infant and you're crying and nobody's coming to tend to that cry, your needs aren't getting met right there. So the infant learns how to self-soothe themselves, learn to just stop crying because their needs aren't gonna get met. And that is a pattern that goes on and on. That can also create this, I need to take care of I need to protect myself. I don't feel safe. All these things that could happen teach us the best way to survive, whatever that is. If you're an adult with unhealed childhood trauma, that childhood trauma seeps out into every area in your life. I showed the world that I was strong. Look at me, how strong I am. There's other things like, hyper independence. Let me raise my hand really high for this one. Those of you who are out there, if you can relate, feel free to message me. I love to know when I'm not alone. You become that type A personality, like it's something we're born with, which maybe we are. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe we are. But that always busy, that trying to be perfect, we're covered that. You're overscheduling yourself, which that in itself creates so much anxiety and fear because I did that. I overscheduled. I said that in my last podcast. I would make plans with 2 people because I didn't wanna say no because I was people pleasing, and then when it came down to it, I had to cancel somebody, so I would just look like a jerk. But, another thing that happens at hypervigilance, you're on constant alert. Your nervous system is activated at all times, and we are gonna talk about our nervous system as time goes on and what happens when you've had trauma, ways to regulate that and try to feel calmer over time. And sometimes we don't even know it's dysregulated. Like, I didn't know. Now I can tell the difference between a regulated and a dysregulated nervous system in a big way. But I don't want to get into that in this one. We're going to talk about that, and maybe I can bring on somebody who's an expert in that. But we'll talk about that. So you're on this like constant alert. Your life seems to be so chaotic, and it's just not just your life, your body is chaotic too. Your jaws are always clenched, your shoulders are up by your ears, you can't sleep, you're restless all the time. You wake up maybe multiple times in the night and your brain is racing and you can't get back to sleep, or you go to fall asleep and your brain is racing because you can't fall asleep. It takes you a long time to fall asleep. Like that is that just overdrive of hypervigilance. And you're so afraid to let your guard down, because if you let your guard down, you won't be alert to the danger that's going to happen, that you just expect to happen because that's what you grew up with. So you're just afraid to even close your eyes. And the body, always will talk about the body. The body lets us know, like, that your body is saying, "Be careful." Don't rest, because if you rest, you won't be able to keep yourself safe because you really feel that you are the only person that can keep yourself safe. And it's interesting when you call somebody strong, when I have mixed feelings about that, especially after my cancer journey. I was the person who always portrayed being strong and not needing anybody, never asking for help. And then I got cancer. I knew I could not get through that by myself. I knew I was going to need help. And that was the hardest thing I ever had to do, was ask for help. It wasn't that I had to ask for help. I physically could not do for myself, which has never happened to me before. The chemo hit me so hard that I couldn't walk down a flight of stairs. I couldn't get off my couch. I was so weak. My muscles were so weak. I couldn't drive myself. And that was new territory for me because I'm the one that helped. I'm the one who always stepped up. Nobody ever had to ask me. I just did it. It was a very weird position to be in, and I'm so grateful for the people I had around me that helped me, that's for sure. But the problem when you're hyper independent or you're always the strong person, nobody can really see what's going on. So I got a lot of messages. I'd get one like every, 3 months or so, like, "Hey, you're so strong." And I didn't want to be strong anymore. I didn't want to appear to be strong. I wanted people to see that I was struggling and I needed help and that I was human. And when I got those messages of, "Oh, you're so strong," all I wanted to do was scream from the rooftops, "I'm not strong. I faked it. I'm falling apart and I need help." Like, that's what I wanted people to see, and I wanted to say that. I wanted to tell people that I was scared. I wanted to tell people I was lonely. I wanted someone to come and save me and help me. And it's funny how those words kind of roll off my tongue now, but they were so hard when I was in it. It was such a realization and a wake up for me that I didn't need to be strong anymore. I didn't need to suppress my emotions. I didn't need to pretend I was fine, 'cause I wasn't. It was a really, really, really interesting spot to be in from somebody who's hyper independent and has just told the world over and over again that I don't need any help and I'll never need any help. But I see now that my strength or me being strong was just another way to kind of avoid the pain. Being so hyper vigilant and hyper independent is one of the reasons why rest can be really hard for someone who has had trauma in their life. Rest feels lazy. Rest means you've let your guard down, and when you let your guard down, that means the danger's coming in, and you're supposed to be looking out for that danger. It feels scary, and it yeah, it just feels scary to rest. So you keep busy. You fill in all your time. Like I said, you have those restless nights sleep because you're on high alert and you can't calm down enough to even rest. That's the other things, like, that puts us into survival mode is, maybe you had to be the parent. Maybe your parents checked out. Maybe they were fighting. Maybe one of them left and the other one had to work all the time. So you were left taking care of yourself or taking care of your siblings. So maybe you never got to have that childhood. You were quick to grow up and you were, bam, just like that, you were an adult. You never had the opportunity to have a childhood, which means you never grieved that childhood. You never grieved that time in your life that you didn't have that carefree, that freedom. You had to step up and be a grown up way before your time. Maybe that's what put you in survival mode. So when now you're the ultra responsible person and stoic and disciplined and which discipline's not a bad thing, but it depends where it comes from, depends what's driving it, the discipline. Maybe you're the kind of person that takes too much on, does too much, and you can't manage the things. You've taken so much on, you're working so many hours, maybe you have a family, maybe you have this, maybe you have that, you're volunteering, and you can't manage it all, but you're really trying to keep busy. And what happens is that you feel so much shame because you can't manage it all. And you're in complete burnout mode because you're everywhere doing everything for everybody. And then there's another survival mode. Maybe you had to stay silent, keep the peace. Maybe you had to hide. Maybe speaking up meant punishment, physical or emotional. Maybe if you spoke up, you were afraid there was going to be fighting or somebody was going to abandon you, again, physically or emotionally. So all you do is you stay quiet, your emotions down. You never let the tears flow because that will mean you're weak. And that was part of my story. I never cried, ever. Crying meant that I was weak and it would make me vulnerable to other people who could come in that moment and hurt me. When I felt those emotions, I would have literally the size of a grapefruit in my throat trying to come out, and I would swallow it down and I wouldn't let it out because I didn't want to be, air quotes, weak. It was so much work for me to avoid those emotions. When you become the quiet one, the one who doesn't say anything, keeps their mouth shut, You go unnoticed in the family. You go under the radar, which is what you're trying to do because you don't want to cause any ripples. You isolate yourself, and it's a very lonely place to be. Because of that, you find it hard to communicate in your relationships or at work. You hate to confront somebody because you're afraid that it could cause, an upset or a fight, or maybe somebody has criticism, constructive criticism, and you take that as such a blow, it really sends you spinning. These are just a couple of survival tactics that I would say that some of us do. And like I said, I probably have tried or done all of them at once or at one at a time. And what I want to do is I want to normalize every single one of these things. We're trying to survive. All we're doing is what we know. We have no choice. We did what we did to feel safe, to keep ourselves safe. We did all of those things. We became hyper independent. We got quiet. We pretended we were strong. These behaviors aren't bad. They were ways that we adapted to keep us safe when nothing else could. So, what can we do now? What can we do now to feel safe? What can we do to not stay quiet, to ask for help, to have fun again? That's one of the things that I've been working on myself. And I feel like the last 10 years of my life had so much, was it trauma? I guess. Aside from my younger trauma, there was closing my business, losing my identity, taking care of my mother who had Alzheimer's, dementia, my health issues, then getting cancer. I mean, there was just a lot. So I didn't have a lot of fun for like 5 or 6 years. I felt that something I needed to work on now was to really let go and have fun and find joy in everything that I do, which I do now. I'm really trying to get back in touch with that person before everything happened, that traumatized child, that carefree person, that uninhibited person, that person or that child that's not guarded and free. And, I'm really working on getting back to that person. And I'm actually having a lot of fun doing it because of what I went through at such a young age. It didn't feel like it was okay to be carefree. I had to grow up, I had to be responsible really quickly, which worked out great for my hyper independence. Even though I was responsible, I didn't feel like I could be as carefree. I found that comedy or making people laugh provided me with another way to avoid the yucky stuff that I was feeling. It allowed me to put another mask over that pain. But at the same time, it allowed me to connect with people, which gave me that feeling that I was liked, which, was really important too. But I was never able to really be a kid, because I'll never be the kid that didn't have the trauma. I will never not have my story. I'll always have that. I had to learn to grieve the loss of my childhood because, I lost it. I lost it like so many of us out there, weren't able to have that childhood. At the same time, I should remind myself that nothing was my fault. Nothing that happened to me had anything to do with me, and it had nothing to do with you. I'm going to repeat that. Nothing that happened to you as a child was your fault, and it had nothing to do with you. We cannot change the past. We can learn to let our guard down. We can learn to ask for help. My message stays the same on every single one of these podcasts. You are not what happened to you. You are so much more than your story. It helped shape who you are. It helped you become the person that you are, but it's not all that you are. I'm proud of who I became, and I'm proud of the path I had to take to get here. So, how do you become less hypervigilant? How do you find your voice? How do you play again? How do you find the courage to ask for help? I'm going to say this over and over again, and I truly believe that our body always tells us what we need it to know. And when you pay attention to your body, when you are in a situation and you want your voice to be heard, yet you're holding that voice back for whatever reason, because you're afraid of their reaction. When you grow up with certain reactions from people, then you live in that fear as an adult that you're going to have that same kind of reaction from people. And sometimes you might. It's just you have to learn how to manage those kind of triggers that come up. But when you are trying to find your voice and you're working on confronting somebody or asking a question, when you pay attention to your body, say your stomach is really upset when you're not saying what you need to say. And I guarantee the second you say it, that stomach ache goes away. It's fascinating when we physically resist what we know to be true and what we know to be what we need. Your body would let you know that it's not happy. So the first and foremost, I will always say to pay attention to your body and how it feels when you say yes to something, when you really want to say no. That's really important. So how do we feel safe? That's a tough one because I do think a big part of that is who we surround ourselves with. As we learn and grow about ourselves, that's kind of trial and error. You learn this person doesn't feel safe, this person does feel safe, and making sure that the safety, the lack of safety isn't something that we're creating in our mind. One thing that I always say to myself, if I don't feel safe, I'm like, do I know this to be true? Or is this the story I'm telling myself? And do I have the facts to back it up? I'll tell you a story. When I was young, our house was broken into twice. Both times we were home. And the first time it was broken into, I heard them smash the glass. I shot up in my bed. I was probably about 11 or 12 years old. I shot up, but I was so groggy that I just laid back down again. And thank God they were in the house stealing something. So that is like one of my fears. I don't sleep with windows open, especially on a ground floor. No way. If I'm by myself, if I'm with somebody, I do. I sleep with my bedroom door shut because I think if the boogeyman's going to get me, he's never going to find me in my bedroom. But if I hear a bump in the night and panic sometimes will just go right through me, and I have to ask myself when I'm like somebody's breaking in, I always have to say to myself, do I know this to be true and do I have the facts to back it up? Or is this just the story I'm telling myself? Clearly, it's the story that I'm telling myself. So that helps me get off the ledge a little bit and remind myself that I'm safe and there's nothing that's going to hurt me. One thing I always do too is just take a minute to do some deep breathing because that deep breathing calms my nervous system. Because when I don't feel safe like that, I can feel my nervous system just get all jacked up and tense. And again, the jaws clench, the shoulders are by my ears, my stomach's getting upset. I'm nervous. I can feel the nervous energy inside my body. So I just take 3, 4 deep breaths. I breathe in, I hold it for a little bit, breathe all the way out, and it does calm me. So I do that. Maybe for some people out there, it might be to talk to a therapist and talk it out. I'm all for that. Finding a support group or even just a community to be around. It's really important for healing to be in community with people. That's part of healing. There's some other silly ways. Maybe you might think there's silly ways, but talk to yourself in the mirror and reassuring yourself and, affirmations. But, affirmations are interesting. I think they're great because words matter. Words matter. How we say them matters. What we say to ourselves matter. What we say out in the world matters. I think understanding your body first, how to calm your body, because if you're not regulated and you're in this fight or flight mode all the time, which is survival mode. I mean, that's you hear fight or flight all the time out there. That is really survival mode. And if you're in that space all the time, it's going to really be hard to look in the mirror and say, "I'm loved. I'm beautiful." Even though I think those things are great, but learning how to tend to your body first, I think is really important. Being still, being able to be still with yourself, even if it's for 5 minutes, because that's all you can take, that is okay. Understand that it is a process to regulate yourself, get yourself to the point where you're okay sitting with yourself in silence. It takes time. A therapist said to me once, and I will never forget it, is in when I was 30 years old, she said, "It has taken you 30 years to get to where you are. You're not going to undo that in 6 months." And she's so right. So wherever you are today, just remember that it's taking you that long to get there. So it is not going to unravel overnight. But I'm hoping that these podcasts help you learn a little bit more about yourself and maybe a little bit more of what you might need to have that peaceful, happy, fulfilled life that you deserve and that you desire. It's no fun to live in the trauma mind and body. We don't have to live there. It's all these little things that you can do to get yourself out of that dysregulated feeling or that intense survival mode feeling, and learn to relax and let your guard down and have fun, even if it's just for a minute, just a minute. I guarantee you that when you let your guard down, and the more you do that, you'll be like, "Oh, I'm safe. Look at that. I had no idea. I had no idea I could be safe. I had no idea I could be safe or feel safe, feel calm." I didn't even know what calm felt like because I was in such a uptight mode my whole entire life, whether that was my overworking or like I didn't sleep, caretaking, people pleasing. I know if you've never heard any of this stuff before and you're listening, it can be a lot. And if you've never heard nervous system regulation or dysregulation or survival or fight or flight or any of those things before, just take what you can from this podcast and leave the rest behind until you're ready. You don't have to undo everything tomorrow, the next week, or the week after. It's just getting that little chunk of information that might help you look at your life a little bit different. Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate you listening. And if there is anything, any subject that anybody wants to talk more about, please, 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 please reach out. I'm open. You can direct message or email, whatever works best. My website is in the show notes and you can email me through there. So until next time, my friends, thank you for listening. And I will see you on the next episode of The Survivor's Chair. I can't thank you enough for listening and supporting the Survivor's Chair podcast. You can read my blogs, get on my email list, follow me on social. Just head over to my website at kimrussellpro.com. That's www.kimrussellpro.com. If you loved what you heard and you want more, don't forget to like, subscribe, and download. It really helps us reach other people. Sending so much love and healing your way, and we'll see you next time on The Survivor's Chair.